Assalamualaikum, we're back to our lecturer Dr. Fajil and our fellow classmates. We are from Group 4 AM 2384B and we will be presenting the topic of International Relation Theory of Marxism. And this is our group members. Marxism in international relations focuses on how economic power, class struggle, and inequality shape global politics. Based on Karl Marx's ideas, it sees capitalism as the main force behind international relations, where rich countries exploit poorer ones. Unlike other theories, Marxism highlights global inequality and how economic systems, not just state actions, drive world affairs. I will explain about the foundation principles of Marxism. Marxism is a social and political theory incorporating the theory of Marxist class conflict and Marxian economics. Marxism is built on several foundational principles that explain how society develops and changes over time. At its core is the idea of class conflict, where society is divided into two main groups: the bourgeoisie, who own the means of production, and the proletariat, who work for them. This conflict between the owning and working classes is seen as the main force driving social and historical change. From the conflict, Marxism offers a critique of capitalism, viewing it as an unfair system where capitalists gain wealth by keeping workers' wages low and benefits minimal. It argues that capitalism cannot last forever, as it causes crises such as falling profits, growing inequality, and even wars. Next, through the principle of historical materialism, Marxism outlines the stages of societal development, moving from primitive communism through systems like slavery, feudalism, mercantilism, and capitalism, before progressing towards socialism and ultimately communism. These changes are shaped by economic conditions and the development of technology, not to forget labor. As society advances, revolutionary transformation occurs when the old legal and economic systems can no longer support new productive forces, leading to the overthrow of outdated structures. This revolution brings about socialism, where the working class controls production, wealth is more shared fairly, and class divisions are removed. The final goal of Marxism is communism, a classless and stateless society in which everyone owns resources together, work is done for the good of all, and all people benefit equally. This vision represents the ultimate end of class struggle and the realization of social equality.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Isrin. I will briefly introduce several influential thinkers in Marxist theory. I will begin with Karl Marx, whereby he founded Marxism. Marx was a fierce critic of capitalism and its effects on society. His most significant works are the Communist Manifesto, co-authored with Friedrich Engels, and Das Kapital. From their work, they established the groundwork for essential concepts such as class struggle and historical materialism. The second core thinker of Marxism is Friedrich Engels. Friedrich Engels is Marx's close collaborator, whereby he played a crucial role in developing Marxist theory. Together, they published the Communist Manifesto, a powerful call for workers' unity. Engels also wrote The Condition of the Working Class in England, which exposed the brutal conditions faced by laborers during the Industrial Revolution, which is an issue that still resonates today. Moving forward, we have Vladimir Lenin, who expanded Marx's ideas into what we now call Marxism-Leninism. He adapted Marxist theory to the realities of early 20th century Russia and famously led the Bolshevik Revolution and helped establish the world's first socialist state. His versions of Marxism, known as Marxism-Leninism, became the foundation for later communist governments. Next, I will explain about another key thinker in Marxism. The first thinker being Antonio Gramsci. He is a Western Marxist known for introducing the concept of cultural hegemony. He argued that the ruling class maintains power not just through economics or force, but by shaping cultural norms and values, which is a key idea for understanding modern social influence. Then we move to the next thinker, which is Rosa Luxemburg, another significant figure who stood out for her critiques both reformism and imperialism. She believed that genuine social change required revolution, not gradual reform, and was deeply committed to democratic socialism. The last thinker is Louis Althusser, who developed structural Marxism. He focused on how ideologies and institutions like schools, media, and religion play a big role in shaping our beliefs. He called these ideological state apparatuses.
I will proceed with the core concepts of this theory. Marxism is a theory that looks closely at how different social classes interact and how power and wealth are distributed in society. It challenges the capitalist system, arguing that capitalism is no longer practical or fair in today's world. According to Marxist theory, capitalism is built on inequality, where a small group of people, which the rich or ruling class, own most of the wealth and resources, while the majority, which is the working class, does most of the labor without getting a fair share in return. This system, Marxists believe, cannot last forever because it leads to growing inequality, social conflict, and environmental damage. Karl Marx believed that private property, where individuals or companies own things like factories, land, or businesses, should be replaced with shared or cooperative ownership. In a system like this, the main goal will not be to make profit or a few individuals, but to make sure everyone's basic needs are met. People would work together to produce and share goods based on what society actually needs, not based on what sells based in the market. In international relations, Marxism imagines a global system where countries cooperate instead of compete. In this ideal world, all nations would help each other to ensure that everyone, everywhere has access to food, housing, healthcare, education, and other basic needs. The focus would be on equality, fairness, and meeting human needs, rather than on money, power, or control.
Next, I will explain the strength of the Marxism theory in international relations. One of the core strengths of the Marxism theory in international relations is its critique of the capitalist power structure, unlike other theories that have a tendency to prioritize state or institutional explanation. This theory challenges the separation of the economic and political domains, exposing how the capitalism disguises power dynamics by its simplifying economic ties. This perspective uncovers the structural injustice that the capitalism system upholds. Marxism analyzes the economic origins of world politics and how capitalism shapes international relations. It makes apparent how capitalist and imperialist tendencies are embedded in the world system so that one may better perceive inequality between societies and countries. Another strength of the Marxism is historical materialism because it focuses on the material conditions and economic factors, which is this theory that provides a framework to understand how historical and economic development shapes international relations, emphasizing the role of the class struggle and economic interests. Historical materialism helps explain why the powerful capitalist countries like Russia can dominate the international system and how global institutions like the World Bank or IMF often serve the interests of the wealthier nations. It shows how the global south remains dependent on the global north due to the historical patterns of the exploitation and economic control. The last one is interrogation of the state sovereignty. Marxism questions the concept of the state sovereignty by examining how states function to uphold capitalist interests, often at the expenses of the true democratic representation and equality. By questioning the neutrality of the sovereignty, the theory can expose hidden power dynamics such as how powerful countries or corporations influence supposedly independent states. In the field of the international relation, sovereignty is often used in this perspective to legitimize and defend elites' political and economic powers. This criticism is especially relevant when the idea of the sovereignty is routinely invoked to justify behavior that works to consolidate global capitalist hegemony.
One common problem with Marxist theory is that it puts too much weight on the economy. It often suggests that everything in society, like politics, culture, or laws, is mainly controlled by money and class. But this view can seem too simple. Society is shaped by many things, not just the economy. Even Marx and Engels later said that money isn't the only factor, but many followers of Marxism still stick to this narrow view. Next, Marxism focuses a lot on class and money problems, but it doesn't pay enough attention to things like identity, dignity, and respect. Today, people also fight for rights based on gender, race, culture, and personal freedom, not just money or job conditions. So, Marxism can miss important parts of what people truly care about in modern struggles. The last another big issue is that Marxist theory doesn't do a good job of explaining racism. It often sees racism as just a side issue, not part of the main problem. But in history, things like slavery and colonialism were shaped by both racism and the drive for profit. Racism wasn't just a result of capitalism, it was built into it. Without looking closely at how race and class are connected, Marxism cannot fully explain how modern inequality works. One of the most powerful real-world examples of Marxist theory in action is the 1917 Russian Revolution. This historical event clearly reflects the core ideas of Marxism, especially the concept of class struggle between the bourgeoisie, the wealthy elite who own land, factories and businesses, and the proletariat, or working class, who had little to no property and were often subjected to long hours, low wages, and poor living conditions. In early 20th century Russia, the majority of the population were peasant and urban workers living in extreme poverty under the oppressive rule of Tsar Nicholas II and the aristocracy. They had little political power or representation. The country's wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few, while the masses endured hunger, exploitation, and hardship. According to Marxist theory, this is textbook example of capitalist system creating inequality and social unrest, which will eventually lead to revolution. The Bolshevik Party, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, adopted Marxist ideology to guide their revolution. They believed that the only way to bring justice and equality was to overthrow the capitalist system and replace it with a classless, communist society where all property and resources will be owned collectively by the people. Marxist theory interpreted the Russian Revolution as a necessary historical stage, a proletarian revolution where the working class would seize power, dismantle class hierarchies, and lay the foundation for a society without exploitation. Lenin and the Bolsheviks argued that revolution was not only possible, but essential to move toward a fairer world where wealth and power would no longer be monopolized by the few. After the revolution, the Soviet Union was formed, aiming to put Marxist principles into the practice by abolishing private property, nationalizing industries, and centralizing planning and distribution. Although the real outcomes were complex and controversial, the ideological foundation of the revolution was clearly rooted in Marxist theory, highlighting the influence of ideas and political change.
In conclusion, Marxism offers a powerful critique of capitalism by focusing on class struggle, economic inequality, and the need for collective ownership. While it's strong in exposing structural injustice and understanding historical revolutions like in Russia and China, it also has limitations, such as neglecting identity and being rigid in today's globalized world. Overall, Marxism remains a relevant lens to examine how power and economy shape society.